Yeah, I mean, you're right. Erceg was available, and listen, it may not be the most exciting name, but if it makes for an exciting fight, his last few fights and last few had like knockoff or should I say walk off knockouts. So I mean, it's the UFC's opportunity to make a star here, and if not, Pantoja is going to go out there and defend his belt, and so I think it's kind of a win-win for the UFC.
Yeah, and you've seen the Australia market coming up. There is a card coming up in Perth, a couple pay-per-views away.
That's a
So
good one.
yeah, there's a lot of potential here with Steve Erceg with a potential victory, and a lot of people don't really know who he is just yet. A lot of people are complaining about it, like we said, but yeah, definitely a coming out party. I don't think he's gonna get. We'll get into like predictions and stuff later, but I think it's going to be an entertaining main event. And overall, a pretty entertaining card. We were saying that before we jumped on here. A lot of people are talking down on this card, but I actually am looking forward to it. I think that on paper, it's pretty solid. Starting with these prelims, right? I mean, we could jump right into our prelim notables if you'd like.
Yeah, before we do that, everyone, if you're watching, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Drop us a note down in the comments. Let us know what fight you're looking forward to most on UFC 301. If you think this is a good fight card, as someone comparing it to a fight night, saying it's a good fight night card, but not quite a good pay-per-view card. I think the name value definitely leaves a little bit to be desired. You got Jamie Malarkey, Jakar Close, Paul Craig, Kyle Barallo. I mean, these are guys that like are names if you're in the sport. Jose Aldo, of course. These are names that, well, hold on. Put Jose Aldo aside. Everyone on this card is a name if you're in the sport. If you're outside the sport, you don't really know anyone on this card other than Jose Aldo. So I think with that being said, I think maybe that's where you're coming from. The pay-per-views are used to having that recognizable, casual name value, where I think definitely 301 lacks it, but I think there's a lot of good matchups on here. So, let us know what you're looking forward to most. If you're watching, drop us a like, hit that subscribe button. We really do appreciate it. And with that being said, let's roll the intro.
It's time!
All right. What's kicking? We're back for another episode of Pickin' Fights. Yeah, like we were just saying, we got some name value on this card. If you're not super familiar with some of these guys, follow along. We'll help you out. Make some intelligent bets. Bet responsibly, please, as always. You want to kick off with the prelim notables? You want to play that little clip as well?
First prelim notable, I'm going to go with just real quick because there's not much to say. Ismael Bonfim, minus 450 heavy favorite. I'm going to put this guy in my parlays. Vince Pichel, 41 years old, hasn't competed in 2 years. Ismael Bonfim, Brazilian. Vince Pichel, obviously from the United States. I think he's been thrown back in here as a way to make a little bit of money, potentially his last UFC fight. And give Ismael Bonfim an opportunity to get off the schneid, get back in the win column in front of the Brazilian crowd. Kind of help him return back to a winning status with his brother. Anything to say on this one, Keith?
Agree. Ismael Bonfim is probably going to get the W here this week. Just expect it to be an exciting fight. Vince Pichel is an exciting fighter. Vince from hell, Pichel. And Ismael Bonfim also super exciting. You remember some of his fights with like Terrence McKinney, his last one around with Benoit Saint-Denis. So expect a banger. But I'm right there with you on Ismael Bonfim. I expect a finish as well. What do you think going up the card? You got any others for us? I got a couple, but they're later on. All right, so I'm going to go with just before the main card, if that's okay, the prelim closer, and that is Joe Anderson Brito versus Jack Shore, and I'm going with Jack Shore. Jack Shore is he's this young kid from Wales. We've seen him be able to do it all. He did drop one against Ricky Simone, but Ricky Simone, super impressive fighter. Jack Shore, it was too high of a jump in competition way too quickly for the kid, but we have seen him develop since then. Makwan Amirkhani a year ago by submission, has a win over Timur Valiev, and pretty solid UFC resume so far. Joe Anderson Brito is a tough guy. He's won his last 4 fights all by finish, and that is what makes me nervous about the fight against Jack Shore this week, because we've seen Joe Anderson Brito be super durable, and get out of some slippery situations, land elbows, land some heavy punches, body kicks. But Jack Shore seems to be super intelligent, pretty gifted overall. So I'm going to be rolling with him to just be the more tactical guy against Joe Anderson Brito, a guy that throws a little bit more flurries. I think Jack Shore is going to get out of the way of some of the harder shots and be more intelligent without going to the ground with a guy like Joe Anderson Brito, a Brazilian who is very adept at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. What do you think about this one, Tom?
Yeah, Jack Shore is a guy who could go out there and outlast and win against Makwan Mirkani. You know, he did lose to Ricky Simone, which maybe gave a little bit of pause. But at 29 years old, I think something that's special about Jack Shore is that he has such a desire to win, and I think he's very humble and he goes out and he knows shortcomings of his. I think he's a guy who's hungrier than a lot of traditional guys we've seen. And I think anybody coming out of the UK, I think they have such pride, especially. I think those UK fighters know that they're underrepresented in terms of championships. So I think all of them have a little special passion about them and a special fire. So give me Jack Shore in this one. I think he's got a little bit better fight IQ here, even though the crowd's not going to be on his side. I'm going to side with you and go with the underdog here in Jack Shore. Tapology, mostly on Joe Anderson Brito, a lot of that by knockout, some of that by submission. I think Jack Shore is just going to get out of the way. There may be some big shots landed by Joe Anderson Brito. But I think when it comes to the takedown, I don't think he's going to have quite as much success as he's hoping on here. I think Jack Shore is going to is going to defend those takedowns. He's going to show off some of that grappling and that judo, and grind out a decision.
Yeah. All right. You got any others for us?
On the prelim, we've talked a little bit about a notable fight here between Miktekbek or Ba. I guarantee you I didn't pronounce that correct, but 12-1-1. Last fight we saw him get that submission neck crank over Euros Medic early on. Only about 5 months ago, fought, a couple of weeks prior to that. Just a lot of activity by this guy out of Kyrgyzstan, one of those scary fighters that you can't really tell what ethnicity they are or how they were raised or what kind of trauma they've seen or anything like that. But this guy fights and he's definitely a scary guy. Whenever you start seeing, Ululu, Kyrgyzstan, once you start seeing all of those syllables, or not syllables, consonants, vowels, it's just a concerning sight. So even though Elvis Brenner has a lot of things going for him, he's plus 210 here. Both guys 26 years old. They're going to be fighting at, should be welterweight, or no, they're fighting at lightweight. So Beck going down in weight here by 15 pounds. Elvis Brenner most recently weighed in at 64. Coming out of shoot the box, knocked out Kenyan Krzyzkowski with that overhand left 5 months ago. Listen, also has a knockout win over Guram Kutulidze. Definitely a guy who has the ability to put you away. I'm just going to side with the man from the mountain, Mick Beck or Bali. What do you think, Keith?
Yeah, typically I wouldn't bet against a guy from a country like that with a name like that and a beard like that. But Elvis Brenner surprises us quite often, and has been really successful as an underdog as well. I mean, I think his last couple of fights he's been a dog in, and maybe not against Canyon, but definitely against Guram Kutulidze and against Tukuzov. But definitely, I mean, the Guram fight was like the big surprise for Elvis Brenner, and that showed that he can hang. And Shoot to Box has been a very successful gym as of late, namely Charles Oliveira, but there's a lot of great fighters coming out of there. So I don't think you can count Elvis Brenner out of this one. I might roll with him here to surprise us. He's a dog. It's a good line for him at plus 210. I think is a straight bet. Like the most likely outcome is that not even going to attempt it except to say oral buy or I'll buy. He's probably going to get the W, but Elvis Brenner is a solid dog this week. So I'm not going to go with oral buy. I may throw a little bit on Elvis Brenner. Yeah, I think he could surprise us. I'm good for prelim notables unless you want to talk about one more guy.
Yeah, there's one more. It's Mauricio Rufy versus Jamie Malarkey. Rufy one shot, adequately named because of all of his knockouts. Ground and pound knockout to Raman Magomelov, which I guess isn't really one shot. TKO by Ronnie Torres, also I guess not one shot. Another TKO by okay. So maybe not adeptly named because his one shot is not really one shot. They're all TKOs. So Jamie Malarkey is a guy who's known to not get one-shotted, but he can be put away if you land a series of punches on him. He does have a good chin, but after being knocked out 4 months ago by Nasrat Haqparast, I don't like the quicker turnaround for him. We also see him get knocked out by Muhammad Naimov. When you kind of live and die by the chin, I think once it starts to show signs of going, especially at 29 years old, that's not a great sign. Mauricio Rufy, a guy who has been heavier before. I think they're going to fight at lightweight. Yeah, they are fighting at 155. So he's going to cut a little bit more weight, but if he can do it successfully, he's going to bring that power. I think if you're Jamie Malarkey, definitely you'd be less afraid if his prowess, his idea was to actually knock you out with one shot because you can withstand that. But it's those follow-up shots that are going to have proven to be an issue for Jamie Malarkey. I think they'll continue to be an issue for Jamie Malarkey because I don't think a problem like that just goes away. So I'm going to go actually with the UFC newcomer and Mauricio Rufy to get it done in front of the hometown crowd. I know he's the favorite. I was thinking about going with Jamie Malarkey, but after the series of knockouts and the adeptness to finish guys on the ground, I think I'm concerned about Jamie Malarkey moving forward.
I got a weird feeling about this card that a lot of Brazilian fighters could have a good chance of losing just because of like how the Brazilian fans are.
That's a good point. That's a really good point.
They're some of the shittiest. They're basically like the international Philly fans. By the way, that's Pat Sawyer if you haven't met him yet. I mean, I know you have. I mean, the people at home. But yeah. So, and Jamie Malarkey does have the potential to pull off an upset, like you said. Solid chin. Somewhat intelligent. Does get into like Michael Chandler mode where he just goes bananas sometimes. Again, I don't think he's a guy that you can count out. I think maybe Jamie Malarkey pulls one off and stops what could be a hype train coming up. I won't throw it. Well, what is he, plus 140? I don't know. What do you think, Jamie Malarkey? Yes or no? Yeah, I think I'm going to roll with Jamie Malarkey here, dude. That's my guy. So, there's a couple of Australian and Welsh fighters on this card, and like guys from like those regions of the world, like UK regions,
right?
And like you said, like those areas have a lot of pride. Like, sure, it's an international fight and it's a tough place to get out to, but a guy like Jamie Malarkey and a guy like we're about to talk about, they don't show up there to go out and lose. They represent every time. So with that being said, you want to kick it off the main card opener?
Paul Craig and Kyle Barallo. This is not one where I think the Brazilian fighter is going to lose. I think Kyle Barallo is going to show off how good he is here, especially his ground game against a very tricky Paul Bear Jew Craig. Listen, Paul Craig is exciting, but he's exciting in a way that puts himself in danger and against really adept fighters who know what they're doing, that have good defensive submission moves. He finds himself in an issue. He also finds himself in an issue with guys who can keep him from taking them down, and then he lands, or they land strikes on him. He just kind of clings to trying to take you down, and I think Kyle Barallo is a guy who is going to, even if Paul Craig gets him down, Barallo's crafty enough to figure that out. 31 years old, entering his prime, heavy favorite. I think Barallo gets this one done.
Yeah, unfortunately, I agree with you. Paul Craig does this whole thing, like we were just saying, country pride for Scotland all the time. It gets everyone amped up when he paints his face blue and starts screaming stuff. But I think, like you said, Kyle Barallo is going to find himself maybe like coming close to being in Paul Craig's guard at some point during this fight. And Paul Craig has the nastiest guard in the entire UFC, in my opinion. It's just outside of that, he can't do much else. And Kyle Barallo is a very well-rounded guy. I think you're going to see Paul Craig looking for something off of his back. Kyle Barallo getting his arms out of there while Paul Craig's looking to tie up triangles and arm bars off of his back. And Kyle's going to slip his arm out at one point and then just start walloping Paul Craig on the ground. Right. Paul Craig, we know what he wants to do. Everyone knows what he wants to do. And unfortunately, his game plan leaves him very vulnerable to another intelligent, guy that's really good on the ground, who is going to see right through that and not fall for the traps and the setups, the jiu-jitsu setups. So I think Kyle Barallo is actually going to probably TKO Paul Craig in the first round. Unless Paul Craig can find a way to sneak something in there, which we've seen him do plenty of times. So, but I think it's Kyle Barallo, like you said. What do we got next?
Moving on up. What do you think about this one? You go first. Kick it off.
So Ihor Potieria stepping in on like somewhat short notice, I think 2 weeks, because Mahmoud Muradov, I think, stepped out. So Pickin, though, he's actually like super entertaining. A lot of people were commenting on social posts about this fight, like Alex Pajeda from Wish and stuff like that. Those are just newer fans that aren't super aware of Michel Pajeda's game. He's basically an acrobat while he's in there. He tries to put on a fight that looks closer to Cirque du Soleil than it actually does a UFC fight. He does backflips. He does all sorts of spinning stuff. And similar to a lot of his previous fights, I think Ihor Potieria is not going to know how to deal with that really well. Ihor does get a little creative and a little wild himself. So it's going to be entertaining. And Ihor is on his last legs with the UFC, I think. You know, sure, he's 3-2 over his last couple of fights, but he's a guy that like is always teetering on the edge of, you know, being removed from the roster. And that's why he took this fight on. Get off the computer, buddy. That's why he took this fight on.
What Keith was saying was,
okay. That's why he took this fight on short notice, though, was to, you know, get himself back in like conversations with the UFC. Yeah, he did win his last one around, but if I remember correctly, it wasn't a great win. And I mean, I could be wrong about that, but yeah. Anyways, I'm going with Michel. I think he's going to do something cool and, you know, make it flashy, make it fun, get the Brazilian fans excited, so that when they leave halfway through Pantoja's fight, they have something to talk about. What do you think?
Yeah, I hear you. I think Michel Pajeda is going to get it done. Simple as that. He's a guy who I actually didn't even realize the win streak that he was on until being confronted with it right in my face here. He's got Nico Price, Andre Fiallo, Santiago Ponzinibbio, Andre Petersky, Michael Olajaychuk. I mean, the names go on and on and on. And they're actually a lot of them are really good caliber of fighters. And on top of that, you know, he's got wins over them in a variety of different ways. So in the ways that he's getting this done is pretty impressive. And you look at Potieria, and it's really kind of the opposite story. You know, Nikolai Negumereanu, who's I don't believe in the UFC anymore. If he is, like, you know, it wasn't a terribly impressive guy to lose to, lost to or beat Shogun Hua, and then followed that up with 2 losses to Carlos Ulberg and Alfo Bellato, both by knockout. And then he has a win over Robert Erceg by decision, which, you know, I think, you know, Erceg wasn't a great level of competition in his own right. So for all those reasons, I think Pajeda is just a different level of athlete. Potieria is coming in on short notice. I don't. His style is that similar to Mahmoud Muradov, but I think either way, Michel Pajeda is going to be able to deal with whatever Ihor Potieria is going to throw back at him. I think he's a strong striker, and he's got a strong ground game. He's got finishes by submission, knockout, and decision. So I'm going Michel Pajeda all the way.
Yeah, all right, I like it. We come together on some picks finally. What do we got next? Anthony Smith versus Vitor Petrino. I'm going with Vitor. He's on an 11-fight unbeaten streak coming in against Anthony Smith, who unfortunately at this point is a shell of his former self. Ever since his family broke into his house, I mean, ever since well, you know, somebody messed with his family, Johnny Walker, or somebody broke into his house or something. But ever since then, he just hasn't been the same guy. Focusing more on the commentating and the podcasting more than anything else. It feels like he's just fighting at this point for a paycheck. He's probably going to go out there and get finished against the hometown guy, Vitor Petrino, build up Vitor a little bit with a name like Anthony Smith, who once, you know, was pretty good. You know, he was all right. But yeah, he's just completely fallen off. And I think Vitor Petrino is probably going to finish him. We've seen Anthony Smith just like shell up on the ground against guys now, not really try to fight back when he gets into vulnerable positions. And then he talks about saving yourself from head trauma and how, oh yeah, this fighter made a smart decision because he did that. It's like, you know, at this point, he's not really going out there to win. He's going out there to collect a paycheck and look out for himself. I mean, maybe he is training really hard and everything, but it just seems like he he doesn't live up to the Lionheart name as much anymore. So I'm going with Vitor Petrino. Sorry, Anthony Smith. What do you think, Tom?
Yeah, and I mean, listen, he's not, all in all that durable. Knocked out by Khalil Roundtree. He did go to a decision with Johnny Walker, but knocked out by Magomed Ankalaev. I think Victor Petrino is a guy who, he went 3 rounds with Tyson Pedro, which I think, wasn't his best display. It was only 2 months ago. 5 months before that, knocked out Modestas Bukauskas. He's a guy who's really got his foot on the pedal here. Submission win over Marcin Prachnio. I don't expect him to get a submission win over Anthony Smith, but I can or I could expect him to go to a decision here, land some of the bigger punches, have more of the bigger moments. We just really haven't seen Anthony Smith have a ton of success as of late. So I think with that being said, Victor Petrino is going to be the pick for me. Minus 485, heavy favorite here, 26 years old. I think he's just all in all hungrier, and up against a guy whose nickname is Lionheart. Unfortunately, we haven't seen that Lionheart in quite some time. Even his split decision win over Ryan Spann, it still doesn't change the fact he's got 2 wins over Ryan Spann, but that's dead, and it even doesn't feel like a win for Anthony Smith had come anywhere in the near or recent history. So yeah, I'm on the Victor Petrino train with this one.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like a win is coming for him anytime soon either. So next up, we got Jonathan Martinez versus Jose Aldo, the King of Rio Jr. But I like the King of Rio better. But that does always take me back to like that quote from Conor McGregor, right, about the favela riding in, and
I would ride into his favela on horseback.
Yeah, kill anyone who wasn't fit to work. But he really was the King of Rio for some time. Like Jose Aldo, owns Brazil. There's a reason why he's already retired, going to the Hall of Fame. He's coming back to fight one last time. His last fight against Merab Dvalishvili really wasn't like a great send-off. Merab tried to take him down like 16 times, and I think Jose defended every single one of them. And by the end of the fight, he's up against the cage while Merab is clinching him, and he's like yawning and stuff like that. But yeah, so that wasn't how you want to go out. I think he announced going into that one that he was retiring. We all know that this is going to be his last fight. Get off We all know that this is going to be his last fight. And I think Jonathan Martinez is a pretty good he's a pretty good matchup for him. It's going to be leg kick city because you look, Jonathan Martinez has actually won 2 fights recently by finishing guys with leg kicks, Cub Swanson and Adrian Yanez, who get off the computer, man. Those are that's nobody to scoff at. Cub Swanson, all-time great. Adrian Yanez, pretty good as well. So, and by the way, I'm not abusing my cat. I'm holding him like a baby right now. But yeah, so I think they're going to be leg kicking the crap out of each other. It's going to be a great stand-up fight. And I just think because of the momentum around it and everything, and because of Jose Aldo and who he is, like, I think he's going to come back and get the victory. Like, I don't think it's absolutely crazy to think that. Like, Vegas has him as a plus 110 dog for a reason, because they think that there's a really good chance that he can do that. They don't want you to profit too much if you bet on him. But I think that there is going to be like a storybook legacy finish. Now, Jonathan Martinez is a tough guy to come back against when you haven't fought in almost 2 years, and you're 37 years old, just about 38. So it is going to be a test of father time here as well, and a major ring rust test. So it's tough, right? Ring rust is real. The age thing is real. Jonathan Martinez is 30, which is like typically when you start to enter your peak. So it is a tough one, but I don't think it's absolutely crazy to think that Jose Aldo could pull off a victory in front of his home crowd here and really actually cap off his career. What is that, the first face-off? Look at that. Yeah, wow. I mean, he looks extremely motivated, angry a little bit. I think he wants to go out there and get the W in front of the fans so that they can leave while he's retiring.
I mean, I was watching this video and I was like, damn, he looks shredded,
Yeah, he looks like
Jose Aldo.
Yeah, he looks like he's in great shape. And let's be real, he did give Merab a great fight, who's now the #1 contender, fighting for a belt soon, probably. And up until the end was fighting great competition. Rob Font, Pedro Munoz, Cheeto Vera got wins over those three guys. Did lose to Piotr Jan, but gave him a good fight for a while there as well. And that was, while Piotr was like at his peak. So we did see Jose Aldo still hang in there. It's just been 2 years and he's 37. But what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of echo everything that you said. I'm going to be going with Jose Aldo here. Reason being is that it's Jose freaking Aldo. His losses recently are in 2020 against Piotr Jan at his peak 4 years ago. And then you have Rob Devalashvili that happened less than 2 years ago. And, that was basically a product of him never getting the takedown and Jose Aldo being held up against the cage the entire fight. So in a fight where he's not held up against the cage, I think he has a really strong chance to go out there, and even if he doesn't get the W, I think to look really, really good, especially for his age, and go out on a fight that's going to be meaningful and that he can be proud of. With that being said, Jonathan Martinez, like you said, he's a really, really strong prospect, good low kicks, and he's got a lot of different. A lot of diversity in his game. He's got those long leg kicks. He's finished a bunch of people by leg kicks, like you said, and the ability to grind out a decision. I think against a guy like Jose Aldo, who is made for defending those leg kicks and then giving those leg kicks, I think the reaction time is just a little bit too pre-programmed for Jose Aldo to fall victim to those low leg kicks. So I think he's going to defend those leg kicks well, make Jonathan Martinez a little bit more one-dimensional, and then that's where Jose Aldo is really going to maybe not necessarily take over. This is 5 rounds or 3 rounds. I would hope it's 3.
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not seeing anything that would say it's 5 or 3. I think if it's 5, that maybe potentially leans in the direction of Jose Aldo because he's just been there before. I think also because, it's a big, being the co-main event of a pay-per-view, I think is definitely a big step for any fighter at any age. So I think for Jose Aldo, it's going to be great for him to, step into that limelight once again, a place where he's very familiar. For Charlie Martinez, where it's a little bit newer for him. So there's always the moment and the nerves. Jose Aldo has shown time and time again how cool and calm he is under pressure. So I think Jose Aldo is going to be the pick. I think he's going to get it done, and it's going to be a great fight no matter what.
Yeah, I agree. But yeah, I think it's going to be a great fight, and especially your point about the leg kicks. Next up, we got Alexandre Pantoja versus Steve Erceg. And a lot of people are sleeping on Steve Erceg, like we talked about before, think that this is like a subpar fight. I actually think it's going to be really good because we know that Pantoja dismantles guys over the course of a fight. He's the truth. He's him, as Max Holloway would say. He's him. And Steve Erceg, though, he has a really complete skill set as well. Great stand-up game, great clinch game, solid ground game, intelligent ground game. Doesn't really put himself in a lot of jeopardy. But if he has Jesus Christ, my cat is out of his mind. If he has
that way.
Yeah, if he has it, well, yeah, you've seen him walk across the computer like 6 times and knock me out of the stream. Yeah, Steve Erceg, if he has it his way, it's like a 1-for-1 kickboxing stand-up match, and I think Pantoja is going to do everything in his ability to make it confusing and give Erceg a really hard puzzle to figure out. One moment he's going to be throwing strikes, next moment he's going to be wrapping Erceg up somehow. But Erceg is, he's got good cardio. He's very calm, collected in a lot of fights. He's put out the lights of guys that, are tough to put their lights out. Like Matt Schnell, yeah, we've seen him get finished. We've seen him, get throttled a couple of times, but he does have a chin on him, and Steve Erceg one-shotted him with a nasty left hook. He's done that to a couple of guys. He's got pretty good one-shot power for the flyweight division. When he sees something, he's really good with his uppercuts and his hooks. When he sees the chin wide open, he's throwing something, and he's putting a lot of lights out. So I think you're going to see Pantoja eat a couple of those. He does have a really good defense. He's really good with his range control, so he won't eat too many. I think ultimately you're going to see Pantoja just dominate over the course of 5 rounds, so the way that we've seen it in the past. It's not going to be as bad as the Brandon Royval fight. I think Brandon won a round, but ultimately Pantoja, he fights angry. We heard him in the past, talk about how angry he is. Well, not that he's outright said that he's angry, but you could hear it in his voice when he talks about his dad and how his dad left him. And he fights with an aggression that a lot of guys just don't have. Like, he doesn't want to give you a second to relax when you're in there with him. And he's fought the who's who of the flyweight division. I think the experience, the tenacity, the fact that he's now entering like these peak years, like we probably got a good like 1 or 2 years out of Pantoja. Right now we've seen him like really hit full form. So I think Pantoja is going to pull out a W this weekend. I think it's going to be a really evenly matched fight for a lot of it. And then you're going to see like, especially like the stand up, and then you're going to see Pantoja do some wild things that are going to throw off Steve Erceg. Just won't give him a second to relax, but there is a chance Erceg pulls it off. We've seen Australia, on the up and up. We have that Perth card coming up. They're kind of putting that together still, right? So there is a lot of implication, with this fight, if Erceg were to pull it off. But unbeaten in the UFC so far, fought decent competition, not the level of Pantoja. Anyways, I've rambled on long enough. What do you think, Tom?
Yeah, I mean, listen, he's fought decent competition, undefeated in the UFC so far. Everything you said, but the reality is this is a guy who is fighting for a belt after 3 UFC fights. And those 3 UFC fights against David Dvorak, Alessandro Costa, and Matt Schnell. 2 decisions and a right hook. So, I mean, when you boil it down, you look at everything in the macro sense. Yes, Eternal MMA, he's done some good things there. Against 1-5, 12-7, 5-4, 12-4, 2-0, 7-5, 4-1, mixed bag of competition at a lower level MMA affiliate. And you come into the UFC, get a win decision over David Dvorak, which is really nothing to scoff at. But you go back and you look at his 3 UFC level competition opponents. David Dvorak, 3-fight losing streak before that. Now against Tatsuro Taira, Alessandro Costa, a guy who lost to Steve Erceg, beat Jimmy Fick, lost to Emil Arbazi, and then was basically 1-2 inside of the UFC. And then before that, you have Matt Schnell, who is not a guy to stuck off at. I'm not saying this is low-level competition, but, he lost to Steve Erceg. Before that, Matthias Nicolau beat Suma Derji, lost to Brandon Royval. No contest, Rogerio Bontorin beat Tyson Nam, lost to Pantoja. So, another guy who's, maybe middling, upper middle in terms of the UFC, in terms of the flyweight division. And you look at Alexander Pantoja as a guy who's just been going out there mauling people. He's really hit, I think, the prime of his career. He's, gotten to a point with his style that he can beat you on the feet. He can land high head kicks. He can knock you out. He can stun you. He can finish you on the ground. He's not going to get outside himself, but he does fight with that reckless, vicious abandon. So for all of those reasons, Alexander Pantoja is the pick. And while Steve Erceg has put on some, interesting fights and big finishes in his time in the UFC, it's miraculous that he's fighting for a belt. Only 3 fights in, 3 UFC caliber opponents in. So I think, unfortunately, Alexander Pantoja is going to beat the snot out of him. But you never know. This could be like kind of that career arc villain origin story where Steve Erceg gets beat. And then, all of a sudden, 2, 3, 4 years from now, he's 32, coming back at a 36, 37-year-old Pantoja and gets the win there, is on the opposite side, takes the belt from him or regains the belt or, something belt related. Who knows? But I think, unfortunately, we're maybe just at the preface of this potentially longer story. So I'm going with Pantoja in this one.
Good point. And I have seen a lot of people ask online why Erceg is in this fight too. Like, I don't think he's totally like inept and yes, I think Pantoja is going to outclass him, but I don't think it's going to be like completely devastating in a way that we go, oh, Erceg's finished. And I think it's going to be, a lot of people are going to see the way that he fights and go, okay, maybe in a couple of years, like you said. And part of the reason he's there is just he's who is available at the moment. A lot of guys are hurt. A lot of guys are booked up. And they needed a main event for this card. So they gave them Pantoja. I think he's the guy that signed on the dotted line. It's the fight that made the most sense. So, you can't, like, this is a solid card now that we've gone through it. You can't hate it all in all, and this is going to be a good main event. So, you want to do a pick rundown and go through it? All right, you want to kick it off for us, Tom?
Yeah, I'll take it. So going Ismail Bonfim over Vince Pichel. Going Rufi over Malarkey, and Silva close. I don't have a prediction there, but I think it's going to be a good fight. Moving up to, I guess, the second part. Moving up to the the regular prelims, I'm going Ora Bali over Elvis Brenner. We didn't even talk about Yasmin Lucindo and Carolina Kowalkiewicz. That's a good fight. I think I'm going to go Lucindo here. Jack Shore over Joe Anderson Brito and Kyle Barallo over Paul Craig. I'm doing Michelle Pajeda over Eor Pateria, Petrino over Smith, Aldo to get the win over Martinez, and Pantoja to get it done and defend over Erceg. Over to you, Keith.
All right. So on the prelims, I got Ismail Bonfim over Vince Pichel. I'm gonna go with Jamie Malarkey over Mauricio Rufi. But I do think, maybe Rufi gets it done. And then also going with an underdog, Elvis Brenner over Mick Tikbek Orolbai. I'm going to have to go back and watch some of his old fights again and just see how that's pronounced. And then I'm going with Jack Shore over Joe Anderson Brito. Main card, I got Kyle Barallo over Paul Craig. I got Michelle Pajeda over Ihor Poteria, Vitor Petrino over Anthony Smith, Jose Aldo over Jordan Martinez, and Alessandre Pantoja over Steve Erceg. I think that actually those first three on the main card are all going to end in finish, too. That's my prediction for those. And then the other two, the co-main and the main event, might go to decision. We'll see. But either way, great episode. Looking forward to this card. Hopefully people don't sleep on it as much. It is kind of sandwiched in there between 300 and 302 with Islam Makhachev, and Dustin Poirier, big star power card there in New Jersey. And then you have the Connor card coming up after that. So it is kind of sandwiched in here, but this is this is a card for the fans. So thank you for being here, taking some time out of your, Wednesday, out of your Wednesday evening to join us. You, as well as the people at home, please like, comment, and subscribe going forward. Really helps us out. Let us know what picks you liked, what you didn't like, and what fights you're looking forward to. Find us on X, at pickinkeith, at pickinfightstom. You can also find us on Spotify, the audio and the videos over there, too. And am I missing anything, Tom?
No.
Okay.
Let's get out of here.
All right.
Take it easy. Enjoy the fights.